Welcome to As Above, So Below Tarot, and welcome to the third and final part of our review and study of the Haindl Tarot by Hermann Haindl. In part 1, we talked about the artist's early life and did a flip through of all 78 cards, and in part 2, we took a look at the Major Arcana. In this video, we will be taking a dive into the Minor Arcana and Court cards, and then we'll be talking about use case scenarios for this deck and whether or not it is right for you. First, we're going to look at the aces in this deck and introduce the suits. Earth in the Haindl Tarot is represented by stones instead of coins or pentacles. Air in this deck is represented by swords, water by cups, and fire by wands. Each suit is assigned a directional attribution which ties into the mythological figures in the court cards. Let's look at the numbered cards in the Minor Arcana. Cards 2 through 10 of the Haindl Tarot are presented as pips instead of scenes. While some of the cards do show as proper scenes, these are not original to the deck. Haindl used his earlier paintings to generate the backgrounds of these pip cards. Let's take a look at one of these and talk about the structure of the numbered cards in the Haindl Tarot. Each card is of course numbered here at the top. Each numbered card also contains an I Ching symbol in one of the corners or in the center. The titles at the bottom of the cards are translated English from the German translation of the names found in Crowley's Book of Thoth, but nearly half of the cards have since been revised with new titles chosen by Haindl. Rachel Pollack includes these new titles in her book on the Minor Arcana. As with the Major Arcana, each card also contains a colored border indicating its element. And something of note, no astrological symbolism is used in the Minor Arcana in this deck. Now that we have that out of the way, let's talk about the I Ching. Now, I'm not going to go into full depth of the I Ching, primarily because I want to keep the video digestible and somewhat brief, but I will include some very helpful videos in the description if this is something you want to get into. The I Ching, or Book of Changes, refers to an ancient Chinese manuscript said to be the oldest written work known to man. Introduced to the West in 1967 by Richard Wilhelm, I Ching saw a surge in popularity in the Western world towards the end of the 20th century. At face value, the I Ching is a complex and deep system of divination. Its core, however, is a framework for understanding the very fabric of time. For the purposes of this video, we will be checking it out as a system of divination, but I will drop a video of a talk by Terrance McKenna on its deeper significance in the description. The I Ching consists of 64 pictorial hexagrams. Each of these are then assigned numbers, descriptive texts, and an overall meaning which make up chapters in the Book of Changes. Solid lines in the hexagram are called light lines, and broken lines are called dark. These follow the Taoist principle of yin and yang existing together in all aspects of creation. To build a hexagram, the diviner typically tosses 3 coins and uses the value of each toss to build one line at a time, starting from the bottom. They then use the I Ching to find the value and meaning of the hexagram, which is done by using the trigrams, or the top and bottom halves of the hexagram, to determine the numbered value of the image. In the deck, Haindl used 2 translations of these hexagrams. Of course, the more famous translation by Richard Wilhelm, and a more modern translation by R.L. Wing. Pollack expounds on the meaning of each hexagram in her book on the Minor Arcana, but a copy of the I Ching books here will give you a richer resource for integrating the hexagrams into your readings with this deck. Let's have a look at one of these cards so you can get an idea of how this works. The original title for the Two of Wands is Dominion, which calls to the duality of desire or will. One wand produces energy for forward movement, and the other attenuates that energy and controls it. Haindl's alternative title to this card is Self-Control. The I Ching hexagram here is numbered 26 and titled The Taming Power of the Great. The bottom trigram, all solid lines, represents the creative or heaven, and the upper trigram, 2 broken lines at the bottom, a solid line at the top, represents keeping still or the mountain. Wilhelm's translation of the judgment of this hexagram is as follows: perseverance furthers, Not eating at home brings good fortune. It furthers one to cross the great water. This illustrates a theme of self-mastery, which works perfectly for the Two of Wands and reminds us it does not represent dominion over others. Let's move on to the court cards in the Haindl Tarot, and then we'll close with some final thoughts. As mentioned in my video introduction to this deck, the typical king, queen, knight, and page in each court card were replaced by Haindl with a mythological figure or a legend from the following cultures: Native American for stones or earth, Egyptian for swords or air, European for cups or water, and Hindu for wands or fire. The mythological and legendary figures used by Haindl in the court cards are set up with one guiding distinction. The daughter and son, typically the page and knight, are represented by figures whose influence on humanity is more direct, and the mother and father, typically queen and king, are represented by figures of more abstract or higher divine nature. Of course, I can't really say anything new about these figures, so we won't be discussing each of them in high detail, but I will be presenting them in pairs and going over them briefly. Here we have the daughter and son of stones. The daughter here is the white buffalo woman. According to Lakota myth, the white buffalo woman taught the Lakota peoples ritual, agriculture, and also brought them the pipe, a very important ceremonial object to these native peoples. The Son of Stones is Chief Seattle, who is the only actual person in this deck. He was one of the last leaders of the peaceful tribes on the northwest coast of North America. Just above his head is a symbol of an orca, who is recognized as sacred by his people. Chief Seattle took ultimate responsibility for his people and for the sacred lands that he resided on. Here are the Mother and Father of Stones. The Mother of Stones is depicted as Spider-Woman. Spider-Woman, along with the sun god of the Hopi tribes, created the earth, life, people, and taught them ritual as well. The Father of Stones here is Old Man, which refers to Bigfoot. Here the idea is we can never see God directly, but rather we see evidence of his presence in reality. The footprints on this card therefore represent the signature of the creator of Earth. Here we have the daughter and son of swords. The daughter of swords is Isis, who appears repeatedly as a symbol for the high priestess. Pollock writes that Isis is capable of filling traditional female roles, but she is not passive, nor is she dependent. The son of swords pictured here is Osiris. Osiris is said to have taught agriculture to humanity. He's also a dying god deity to the Egyptians, which calls to the Christ. He was destroyed by his brother Set, his body was reconstructed and embalmed by Isis, giving him eternal life. Here we have the Mother and Father of Swords. The Mother of Swords here is Nut. Sometimes called the Mother of the Nile, she is typically known as the night sky arched over the earth. She is pictured here as seen from below and as seen from afar. She is the night to Ra's day, the receptive to the active. The Father of Swords here appropriately is Ra, who likely began as the god of the priest class or pharaohs in Egypt, but he became a supreme deity in Egyptian mythology. Now the daughter and son of cups. The daughter of cups here is Brigid of Ireland, and her face is based on that of Haindl's wife, Erica's. The goddess of poetry, prophecy, and divination for the Celts, and when Ireland became Christian, she became a saint. She is said to have been born at sunrise and within a threshold to a house. In Celtic tradition, things that are not one or another, such as inside, outside, day or night, open the way to the other world. The Son of Cups here pictured is Parsifal, who is a character rather than a religious figure, depicted confronting the Grail, suddenly aware of divine truth and the Holy Spirit, which is why he looks a little stressed out. Now the Mother and Father of Cups. The Mother of Cups here is Venus of Willendorf, who is not really Venus. This just comes from the habit of referring to all prehistoric female figures as Venus. There is no mythological significance to this statue, at least none that we know of, because it is 30,000 years old and therefore shrouded in mystery. The Father of Cups here is Odin. For Haindl, Odin symbolizes the qualities he finds difficult in Europe, and especially Germany. He sees Odin as aggressive and conquering. At the same time, he clearly admires Odin as a shaman, the oracle, the father of wisdom. He has suggested that perhaps his own experiences of the sometimes difficult relationship between a son and a father may have been built into this card. Finally, we come to the Wands. Here is the Daughter and Son of Wands. The daughter's attribution is that of Radha. Radha is the earthly manifestation of the Hindu goddess Lakshmi, who is seen as the goddess of enlightenment, progeny, abundance, and success, among other things. She is also the wife of the famous Krishna. The Son of Wands here, of course, is Krishna. Krishna is the earthly incarnation of Vishnu, one of the three principal deities in Hinduism. He is seen as the preserver of dharmic principles when the world is threatened with destructive force. Now, stories about the marriage of Radha and Krishna seem to permeate the Hindu religion, as they saw each other as equals, sometimes even reversing their roles as husband and wife. Now on to the Mother and Father of Wands. The Mother of Wands here is Kali, or Kali Ma, who is the ultimate divine feminine Hindu deity according to followers of the Tantra. She is fearsome and to some demonic, but according to modern sages, she is inextricably bound to the Maha Kala, or the Absolute. She is the ultimate representation of feminine, not necessarily female, chaos, and calls to the wild female energies, which does not recognize boundaries. The Father of Wands here is Brahma, who is also one of the principal creator deities, and is the form the unknowable source of creation takes. He is regarded as the father of Dharma and the giver of life to humanity. So those are the court cards. In readings, I've found these cards to be a somewhat abrupt departure from the remainder of the deck. Some of the figures depicted are familiar archetypes that match well with the card in question, but others, like the Mother of Cups' Venus of Willendorf, are muddled and a bit confusing. The mythological figures in the court cards seem to have been put together in service of making the deck as multicultural as possible, rather than adding layers of meaning applicable to the established archetypes themselves. This takes us to my final thoughts on the Haindl Tarot. Artistically, the Haindl Tarot is a masterwork. Its striking imagery and subdued color palette allow for an immersive and spiritual experience when working with this deck. Studying it proved to be challenging and reminded me of just how little I know about tarot. Without the beautifully written books by Rachel Pollack, I honestly would have been lost, which brings me to my final point. The Haindl Tarot is something which must be unlocked if you want what it has to offer. If you don't have Rachel Pollack's books, some of the runic correspondences in the Major Arcana will be lost on you, and you will definitely need some precursory knowledge of the I Ching as well as a reliable book for those translations. The court cards, it's hard to say where I stand on them. In my research on these figures, I found some factual contradictions to Pollack's writings, which took some of the magic away from this important piece of the deck. You could use them as a loose extension of the Major Arcana, or you could ignore their intended correspondences if it doesn't serve your reading. Regardless of your experience level with tarot, I think this deck is worth a spot on your shelf. It will fit securely in your collection and serves as a valuable artifact of 20th century esotericism. Haindl was a student of the horrors of his time, and this deck is his manifesto of peace, harmony with nature, and the unconditional love for humanity. Thus concludes my review of the Haindl Tarot. There were times when making this that I felt I was biting off a little bit more than I could chew, as this deck, especially the Minor Arcana, is especially dense. Thank you for coming along with me on this ride. I want to give a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed recently. Right now there are 21 subscribers to this channel, and the fact that there are any people willing to listen to me talk about this stuff is just incredible to me. Just a quick heads up, I have started an Instagram account for the purposes of sharing interesting spreads and cards that I like on a more daily basis. Follow me there for updates as well. Once again, this has been As Above, So Below Tarot. Thank you for watching, and stay well.